Every empire wanted one thing: wealth. Kings fought for it. Merchants risked their lives for it. Entire civilizations were built upon it. History remembers it as the Silk Road. But that name hides a much greater story, because the most valuable thing that traveled these ancient roads wasn't silk, it wasn't spices, it wasn't gold, it was wealth itself. Wealth that built cities, financed empires, and quietly changed the course of history. But how could a single network of roads stretching thousands of miles accomplish something so extraordinary? To answer that, we must travel back more than 2,000 years. More than 2,000 years ago, the world was divided by distance. To the west stood the mighty Roman Empire, a civilization of marble cities, powerful armies, and endless ambition. Far to the east, the Han Dynasty ruled over one of the richest and most advanced civilizations on Earth. Between them lay vast deserts, towering mountains, endless grasslands, and some of the most dangerous landscapes imaginable. To most people, these lands marked the edge of the known world. But for a courageous few, they marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Every step forward carried risk. Every mile held the promise of unimaginable reward. Those travelers didn't know it yet, but they were about to create the greatest trade network in history. It all began with a single desire: to reach the riches of the East. The Romans dreamed of luxurious Chinese silk. The Chinese valued powerful horses from the West. Persia stood between them, connecting distant worlds through trade. Soon, merchants began crossing deserts, climbing mountains, and risking everything to carry precious goods across continents. Each journey took months. Some lasted more than a year. Many never returned. But those who survived could earn fortunes beyond imagination. What began as a few dangerous journeys soon became something far greater: a vast network of trade routes stretching thousands of miles across Asia. For the first time in history, civilizations separated by deserts, mountains, and oceans were connected by commerce. Silk traveled west, glass traveled east. Spices, jade, gold, precious metals, ideas, inventions, and even religions moved from one civilization to another. The Silk Road was no longer just a road. It had become the artery of the ancient world. As the caravans grew larger, the road grew busier. Every successful journey carried more than valuable cargo. It carried opportunity. Cities along the route flourished, markets expanded, merchants became wealthy, and kingdoms discovered that controlling trade could be even more profitable than conquering new lands. Without realizing it, the travelers of the Silk Road were changing the course of history. They weren't just moving goods across continents. They were building a new world. What began as a search for wealth would become something far greater. The Silk Road would reshape economies, transform civilizations, spread knowledge, and create fortunes that would echo through history. Its influence would reach far beyond the merchants who traveled it, or the empires that fought to control it, because this wasn't just the story of a trade route. It was the story of how trade changed the world. And this was only the beginning. The Silk Road wasn't built because people wanted to explore. It was built because they wanted something far more powerful: wealth. Across the ancient world, luxury was more than a symbol of success. It was a symbol of power. Roman nobles paid enormous fortunes for Chinese silk. Kings competed for rare spices. Emperors filled their palaces with jade, ivory, fine glass, and precious gems. The farther a product traveled, the more valuable it became, and every mile along the Silk Road added to its worth. The journey was long. The dangers were real. Blazing deserts, towering mountains, freezing winters, and ruthless bandits threatened every caravan. Many merchants never reached their destination, but those who did returned with fortunes beyond imagination. A single shipment of silk could be worth more than its weight in gold. For those willing to take the risk, the rewards were extraordinary. As trade expanded, something remarkable began to happen. Small settlements grew into thriving cities. Bustling markets appeared where there had once been empty wilderness. Caravanserais offered weary travelers a place to rest, exchange news, and prepare for the next stage of their journey. Every caravan that arrived brought new wealth. Every merchant who traded helped entire communities prosper. The Silk Road wasn't just connecting empires, it was creating new centers of civilization. The greatest fortunes were never made by a single merchant alone. They were built by entire civilizations. Empires taxed the caravans that crossed their borders. Cities collected fees from traders entering their markets. Craftsmen transformed raw materials into priceless treasures. Bankers financed dangerous expeditions. Every exchange created new wealth. The Silk Road became more than a network of roads. It became the economic engine of the ancient world. But the Silk Road carried far more than wealth. With every journey, ideas crossed borders. Cultures met. Languages blended. New inventions spread from one civilization to another. Religions traveled alongside merchants. Knowledge moved as freely as silk. The Silk Road wasn't simply changing economies. It was changing the course of human history, and its greatest impact was only beginning to unfold. The Silk Road carried silk. It carried spices. It carried gold. But its greatest cargo could never be packed into a caravan. It was knowledge. Every traveler brought more than merchandise. They brought stories, new ideas, new discoveries, and new ways of understanding the world. With every journey, civilizations grew closer together. The greatest fortunes were never made by a single merchant alone. They were built by entire civilizations. Empires taxed the caravans that crossed their borders. Cities collected fees from traders entering their markets. Craftsmen transformed raw materials into priceless treasures. Bankers financed dangerous expeditions. Every exchange created new wealth. The Silk Road became more than a network of roads. It became the economic engine of the ancient world. But the Silk Road carried far more than wealth. With every journey, ideas crossed borders. Cultures met. Languages blended. New inventions spread from one civilization to another. Religions traveled alongside merchants. Knowledge moved as freely as silk. The Silk Road wasn't simply changing economies. It was changing the course of human history, and its greatest impact was only beginning to unfold. The Silk Road carried silk. It carried spices. It carried gold. But its greatest cargo could never be packed into a caravan. It was knowledge. Every traveler brought more than merchandise. They brought stories, new ideas, new discoveries, and new ways of understanding the world. With every journey, civilizations grew closer together. As the Silk Road flourished, so did the empires that controlled it. Every caravan carried opportunity. Every marketplace generated wealth. Every border crossing filled royal treasuries. Kings understood a simple truth. You didn't have to own the goods. If you controlled the road, taxes on merchants, fees at city gates, and trade flowing across thousands of miles created riches beyond imagination. Power no longer came only from conquest. It came from commerce. The wealth transformed entire civilizations. Magnificent cities rose from the desert. Bustling markets overflowed with goods from distant lands. Grand palaces grew larger. Libraries filled with priceless knowledge. Artisans created masterpieces that amazed the world. The profits of trade funded great buildings, powerful armies, and ambitious rulers. The Silk Road didn't simply enrich merchants, it helped build empires. For centuries, the Silk Road stood at the center of the known world. It created fortunes, it raised great cities, it strengthened empires, and it connected civilizations across continents. But history never stands still. New challenges were beginning to emerge. The roads that had carried unimaginable wealth for generations would soon face their greatest test. The next chapter of the Silk Road would be one of change. Nothing lasts forever, not even the greatest trade route in history. For centuries, the Silk Road had connected civilizations, but the world was changing. Empires rose, empires fell. Wars disrupted ancient routes. Political instability made every journey more dangerous. The road that had once brought the world together began to grow quieter. As dangers increased, Merchants searched for new paths. The sea offered new possibilities. Powerful ships could carry larger cargo, sail greater distances, and avoid many of the dangers that haunted the overland routes. Slowly, trade began to shift from the desert to the ocean. A new chapter in global commerce had begun. The great caravans became fewer. The once crowded caravanserais grew quiet. Many of the world's busiest trade routes began to fade into history, but the Silk Road had already accomplished something extraordinary. It had connected continents, shared knowledge, created unimaginable wealth, and changed civilizations forever. Its influence could not be erased. The road itself may have fallen silent, but its legacy continued to spread across oceans, through new trade routes, and into every civilization it had once touched. The spirit of the Silk Road lived on in every exchange of goods, every shared idea, and every connection between distant peoples. Its legacy would endure for centuries to come. The caravans disappeared, but the world they had created did not. The Silk Road transformed the way civilizations traded. It accelerated the spread of ideas. It brought distant cultures together, and it carried prosperity across continents. Its roads may have faded beneath the sands, but its legacy continued to shape the future. The Silk Road was ending. Its influence never would. The Silk Road was fading, but its spirit was already crossing the seas. Trade did not end, it evolved. Great wooden ships replaced long camel caravans. Busy harbors replaced desert caravanserais. The routes had changed, but the purpose remained the same: to connect people, to exchange ideas, and to create prosperity across the world. As the centuries passed, the world became more connected than ever before. Goods traveled farther, ideas spread faster, and distant civilizations grew closer together. The foundations of global trade had already been laid, not by modern technology, but by the courage of countless merchants who crossed deserts, scaled towering mountains, and sailed vast seas in search of opportunity. Today, the camel caravans are gone. The ancient caravanserais stand silent, but the connections they created still live on. Every product that crosses a border, every culture that shares its traditions, and every idea that inspires another generation carries a small part of the Silk Road's legacy. Its greatest journey is still continuing. History remembers the Silk Road as a trade route, but that was only part of the story. It was a bridge between civilizations, a highway for ideas, a path to prosperity. It proved that commerce could achieve what armies never could. For centuries, it brought distant worlds together. And in doing so, it quietly reshaped the course of history. The greatest treasure of the Silk Road was never silk, it was never spices, it was never gold. It was connection, the exchange of knowledge, the meeting of cultures, the sharing of ideas, and the belief that people separated by thousands of miles could still shape one another's future. That was the Silk Road's greatest gift to the world. Empires rose, empires fell, the caravans disappeared, but the idea, the connections, and the wealth they created never truly vanished. Even today, the echoes of the Silk Road can still be found in the goods we trade, the cultures we share, and the world we have built together. The Silk Road was more than a road. It was the beginning of a connected world, and that is why it became the trade route that made empires rich. If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe to Wealth of Empires Docs for more cinematic documentaries about the empires, trade routes, and remarkable people who shaped our world. And let us know in the comments, which historical story should we explore next?